Hey, this is Warren Redlick. You're not going to believe this, but there's another Tesla killer. I think we've had about 15 years of Tesla killers, maybe 2 or 3 a year. We got another one. This Tesla killer actually achieved it because all the other ones didn't, and this one doesn't either. The Xiaomi YU7 is a new SUV in China, and on paper, and some reviews are saying, oh, wow, this is better than the Tesla Model Y. Is it really? What's the full story they're not telling you? I'm going to show you this review and we're going to talk about it. And I also want to show you some key statistics that they're not talking about and that Xiaomi is not really sharing.
Hello and welcome to the Telescope. Every week we'll bring you a fresh insight from the biggest car market in the world. Today we get to drive the Xiaomi YU7. Is this Xiaomi's Model Y moment? I think you will agree that this car is so much more than just a Model Y. The Model Y's design is clean, but it's not as charismatic as this one. Xiaomi can do this because this car is over 220 millimeters longer on the outside, but it's only a fraction bigger on the inside. It is bigger than the Model Y, you can see here, and also according to this material, it's got 10 millimeters more longitudinal knee room than the Model Y.
Okay, let's start with that. There's a claim that it has more knee room. He didn't mention headroom, did he? Now, if you go back and you look at the exterior of this car, there's no way that this car has more headroom than Model Y. 220 millimeters longer, and you get 10 millimeters more knee room. Now, I have a brand new Model Y. The brand new Model Y has lots of leg room. There's no shortage of leg room in a Model Y, so this is not necessarily an improvement. But this is one of the things that they are not telling you. The Xiaomi is almost 5,000. It's almost 5 meters long. It's basically 5 meters long versus 4750. So the difference is actually about 250 millimeters, 25 centimeters. It's about 10 inches longer. Okay, 10 inches longer than the Model Y. And the thing that they really, and it's wider, it's 78.6 inches versus 75.6 inches. It's 3 inches wider. The Model Y is already a wide car. It's already a long car. In Asian markets, smaller cars have an advantage on some narrow roads. So my Model Y sometimes feels a little bit big on some of the roads that we go on. And this is going to be significantly more of a difficult vehicle to park and a difficult vehicle to navigate narrow roads. But the big one they're not talking about is the curb weight. The curb weight is dramatically heavier than Model Y. You can see it 2460 at the top end versus 1998 at the top end for a Model Y. So over 460 kilograms heavier on the high end. On the low end, maybe 300 kilograms heavier. That's 660 pounds to it's almost 1,000 pounds heavier in some cases. It's a much heavier car. It's important to keep that in mind as we dive further into this. And in terms of height, they're about the same height. The Model Y is slightly taller. Well, that tells you something. And if you understand why the YU7 is so heavy, it's because it has a very large lithium iron phosphate battery pack underneath. And lithium iron phosphate is heavier, and it also takes up more volume. So it has to be wider, it has to be longer, and it has to be taller. So there isn't as much headroom in the YU7, and it's very hard to find interior dimensions online. But one thing I did find is the cargo area. The Model Y in total cargo volume has about 2,100 liters of cargo space. The YU7 is like 1,900. So there's about 200 liters more cargo space in the Model Y, even though the YU7 is a much bigger vehicle. The big advantage that the YU7 is going to claim is it has a lower price point, but then you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, you're putting 400 kilograms more stuff in this car. So your raw material cost is roughly 20% higher, right? You got 2,000 kilograms, you add 400 kilograms, that's 20%. You got 20% more raw materials. And they're going to claim, oh, it's got Napa leather and it's got massaging seats. So you've got more expensive components. And somehow you're selling the car at a lower price. Do we think that Tesla doesn't manufacture efficiently? No. And they're buying their battery from BYD. Tesla buys its batteries from CATL or LG. Do they have some sort of special advantage in buying batteries in higher volume? They're not higher volume than Tesla yet. So how are they getting cost out? And the answer is because they're losing money on the car. We know with Chinese accounting that they'll claim they're making money on the car, and the reality is they're losing money on the car. You can't just like wave a magic wand and suddenly take something that has 400 kilograms more material in it and more expensive components and somehow manufacture it more efficiently at lower cost than Tesla, which is an extremely efficient manufacturer. That's the baseline we need to get into as we watch more of this video and as you pay attention to other people telling you this is the Tesla killer. Uh-huh. Sure it is.
So Xiaomi has effectively given designers a lot of freedom to waste space so that they can.
They've gotten freedom to waste space. Does that sound like an efficiently manufactured vehicle if the designers had freedom to waste space? Does that sound like efficient manufacturing and efficient design? Doesn't to me.
Including this self-leveling camera. Now, this car, being almost self-driving ready, has a suite of cameras looking around 360 degrees of the car on the outside. So all of the sceneries you see on the road, those cameras facing outside will take care of you. Other smart touches, how about this tissue paper box that is manufactured by Xiaomi and magnetically mounted behind the infotainment screen. So no matter how hard you're cornering, this tissue paper box will not roll around and you will always get your tissue paper behind the infotainment screen.
Okay, you got us. Tesla doesn't have a mounted tissue box behind the display. I'm going to sell my Tesla now and buy a Xiaomi because I need that tissue box. Like that's the selling point. I give up. I was wrong. It is a Tesla killer because Tesla has not thought to put a tissue box behind. You got to be shitting me. This is ridiculous. That's it? That's the kind of bullshit that you're saying makes this a better car? You got a phone mount over here. You got a goofy camera that's never going to be used. You're throwing all this extra hardware in the car. And somehow you're able to manufacture this thing at lower cost. You got the extra camera here. Okay, Xiaomi makes the cameras. Xiaomi makes all this stuff. Somebody's still got to put it in the car. There's a labor cost. There's so many things going on here. Like, yeah, you got your LiDAR, you got your radar, you got all these there's extra cameras. How are you manufacturing this for less than Tesla? I don't think so.
From the first turn of the steering wheel, you can instantly tell that this car's body is much slower to react to your steering. This, being an SUV, is much slower to follow your steering. But it's not lazy, it's just that I have the expectation that this car can be a very sharp handling SUV, and it doesn't have that.
Oh, so it's not sharp handling. Maybe that's the extra 400 kilograms of mass?
Off-center response is also, it's not slow, but it's much lazier. If you're looking for that kind of immediacy, that kind of sharpness, I think you will have that back in the YU7 Ultra.
Or you can get it in a Model Y.
When we're driving in this kind of twisty mountain roads, when you are trying to position your car in a narrow lane and you're just trying to see where the edge of the road is, where the edge of your current lane is, and with traditional heads-up display, it's right at your line of sight, which could be quite distracting.
So your vehicle is so wide you have trouble keeping it in a narrow lane? Maybe a vehicle that's 3 inches narrower would be better for those circumstances. Like, I can't think of a car that's 3 inches narrower that you claim this vehicle kills. Tesla Model Y, 3 inches narrower. Also quite a bit shorter, 10 inches shorter. Maybe there's some advantages to not being so wide and so long. And so heavy.
And another advantage this have over, let's say, traditional displays.
I just want to note here that this guy keeps talking about the car. He's already done a review of the car, the YU7. The title of the video is "This is a Tesla Model Y killer," and he hasn't really compared it to Model Y. Like, why did you make your video? And this is another thing I want to hit on. Why is it just a Model Y killer? I mean, Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. It's the best-selling car in China, but there's many other cars. And I tend to think that great EVs, and this probably is a pretty good EV, great EVs take market share from fossil fuel cars. We want more people to buy EVs. We want people to buy less fossil fuel cars. So if the YU7 comes along and sells a lot and 90% of those sales take away from fossil fuel cars, that's better. The idea that somehow 90% of its sales are going to come from Model Y doesn't make any sense. Model Y is probably 2% of the cars sold, maybe 5% of cars sold. So if you're going to take share from other vehicles on the market, there's 95% of the other cars you're going to take share from too. And if Model Y is the best car out there besides yours, let's say your car is better. Wouldn't you buy this car over some other car? Like, wouldn't it take sales from the Sea Lion 7, the BYD Sea Lion 7, for example? Nobody says it's a BYD killer. On the one hand, we keep getting told BYD is selling more EVs than Tesla. And then when some other vehicle comes along, it's a Tesla killer instead of a BYD killer. Why isn't it a BYD killer? Why isn't it a Toyota killer? Why isn't it a BMW killer? This is supposedly some great sports SUV. Why isn't it taking out the BMW X3? Why does it have to be about Tesla? And the title of the video said it was better than Tesla Model Y, and he hasn't talked about Model Y yet. We are halfway through this video, more than halfway through this video, and he hasn't talked about the Model Y. There's no comparison. He's just pumping the YU7 without really giving it much thought. He mentioned Model Y briefly for interior knee room and length of the vehicle. Where's the comparison? How is this a Tesla killer? It's not in this video so far, and we're 2/3 of the way through.
This has much better resistance to outdoor lighting. The Xpeng G7 we showed you last week, it claims to have 12,000 nits of peak brightness. This only has 1,200 nits of constant brightness, but this deals with daylight, direct sunlight, whatever car you're following, doesn't really matter because this is projecting all of the info on a black background.
I just want to mention that I removed a lot of the video because the guy blathered on about the heads-up display that's tiny and probably hard to see, and you're probably not going to pay much attention to it. But he does mention that it's better than the heads-up display on the Xpeng G7. Well, then why isn't your video saying it's an Xpeng G7 killer? Which, by the way, the Xpeng G7 killer was the previous Tesla Model Y killer that didn't kill the Model Y. Right? Because there's always a Tesla Model Y killer coming. So the Xpeng G7, which is a nice SUV, I'm not kind of trying to crap on it or anything. China makes a lot of good EVs. It's not better than the Model Y, and this isn't either.
A quiet car where we are, let's say, 15% over the highway speed limit, and you barely notice the wind noise, but the tire noise, because today we are on the optional 275 section rear tires and also on the optional 21-inch wheel. Tire noise is noticeable, and with big wheels, it's quite selective on tarmacs. If you're on the wrong kind of tarmac, you can pick up quite a lot of wheel noise and tire noise, and also noise from the wheel rim itself.
Okay, so he's talking about the noise in the car, and he says it's reduced wind noise, but let's keep in mind this has a higher coefficient of drag than the Model Y. It's 0.245 versus 0.22, I think. So it's not as efficient an aerodynamic design, and it has much larger frontal surface area because it's 3 inches wider, right? So it's got to push more air out of the way, and it doesn't do it as efficiently. And apparently it has tire noise that's loud. I drive a new Model Y every day. Mine's pretty quiet. Are you going to say that this is quieter than Model Y, or are you going to leave out that detail because you know it's not quieter than Model Y?
On range, the single motor rear wheel drive version with the smallest 19-inch wheel is rated at something above 800 kilometers an hour, which is an absurd number.
Just so you see here, on the far right, you can see range numbers: 760 kilometers CLTC, 600 kilometers WLTP, 340 mile EPA. So I believe this is not the base model. 340 miles EPA range, I believe, is less than the longest range Model Y in America. So the claim that this has more range than Model Y is dubious. I think on the low-end vehicle, it has a really large 96 kilowatt hour lithium iron phosphate battery pack that gets it a lot of range but adds a lot of weight. It's not particularly efficient, right? So you'll use more electricity. And yeah, it has more range than the base Model Y. I don't think it does better than the long-range Model Y, or at least not significantly better. And it has to do it with a much larger battery pack, 101.7 kilowatt hour battery pack. Model Y has 75 kilowatt hour battery pack, and they have about the same range. What does that tell you? Model Y is more efficient. Tesla makes more efficient cars. So somehow Tesla's able to make a car that's more efficient, but these guys claim that they're able to make a car with higher manufacturing efficiency. dramatically more manufacturing efficiency because you're throwing 400 kilograms more mass into this car and you claim you're manufacturing it for lower cost, and yet you can't make it a more efficient vehicle. It doesn't add up.
And also this car is quite low for an electric SUV. It's only 1600 millimeters, which is not that tall for an electric SUV.
It's about the same height as Model Y. It's slightly lower, but it's about the same height as Model Y. The difference is trivial. I showed you this before. It's 1600 millimeters tall. There's 63 inches versus 63.9 inches. It's barely shorter than Model Y.
Now, price. We're filming this on June the 13th, about 2 weeks before the actual launch. I think there is still a chance for this car to be on Model Y's price point because there is a coil spring version of this car with a single motor, rear-wheel drive, slightly smaller 96.5 kilowatt hour LFP battery. Now, could that version of the YU7 hit 265,000 renminbi? I think it has to. I think Xiaomi almost start with that price point and work backwards.
Just really quick, they brought it in at a lower price point than that, under 260,000 renminbi, somewhere around 35,000 US dollars, and it undercuts Model Y in price. This is the base model, not the one he's driving here. The base model does undercut Model Y. It does have a huge LFP battery, and it does get more range, but it's 400 kilograms heavier. And it doesn't have as much interior room, despite the false claims that it does. Let's see, you've got a lower roofline. You didn't mention headroom. Why didn't you mention? You mentioned knee room, 10 millimeters? Really? That's like tiny. But you didn't mention the headroom. And it's rear knee room. What about front knee room? Like, there's all these issues with they're being goofy with. But it's fundamentally a larger car outside and a smaller car inside. And it's a heavier car. So yeah, you can price it however you want. You can underprice your car and lose money on every car, especially if you have Chinese accounting and Chinese government subsidies. But how long are you going to be able to keep that up?
On this car, because I know this car doesn't look like a Model Y rival, but it is. This is not the first car that's trying to dethrone Model Y's domination in China. First up is the X1 G6, which is still an excellent car. I still recommend that, especially after the facelift. Then it's the Envoy L60, which in my testing beats Model Y on sheer energy efficiency. Then it's the Zeekr 7X, which is a slightly different kind of beast. It's more upright, more luxury, with some off-road capabilities.
You notice how he has 3 other SUVs from China that he said were going to beat Model Y and didn't. The endless line of Tesla killers. For 15 years, we've had Model S killers, we've had Model X killers, we've had Model 3 killers, we've had Model Y killers, and nobody seems to kill them. Why? Because you get guys like this to make videos like this, and they're probably being paid, or they're getting really cushy treatment to pump this car. And if they don't give a positive review and they don't say it's better than Model Y, they don't get invited to the next one. But the practical reality is the consumers speak. And Chinese consumers know, and I'm here in Thailand, Thailand consumers know Tesla is a better brand. Tesla is a more reliable brand. Tesla makes better cars that you can trust. And the Chinese EVs, they may be good and they sell to people who can't afford a Tesla. This is the key. They sell to people who can't afford a Tesla, right? That's the target market. People who can't afford a Tesla, we want to sell you a car. Well, then you're really a BYD killer. And they won't say that. Why don't they say it's a BYD killer? Why don't they say it's an Xpeng killer? I forget, Zeekr. Why don't they say it's a Zeekr killer or a Deepal killer? There's all these Chinese EVs out there that are Model Y killers that don't seem to kill the Model Y. Maybe they're all competing for the not Model Y share, and that's why BYD is cutting their production and having all kinds of problems, and the Chinese government is begging the Chinese EV makers to stop undercutting each other on price.
YU7, the final punch to knock down Model Y in China? I think it is.
Of course you do, but you said it about the last ones. You guys keep saying this about every damn car out there. This one's the Model Y killer. This one's the Model Y killer. Oh, but this time it really is the Model Y killer. Thanks, Skippy. Really appreciate you.
Also, this will start a positive feedback loop, making people realize that all of the other cars I just mentioned, in just about every way, is that much better than the Model Y. The snowball is only just starting to roll.
This is supposed to be a comparison between the Xiaomi and the Model Y. Where's the Model? There's literally 7 seconds left in this video. He hasn't shown you a Model Y. He hasn't sat in a Model Y. He hasn't driven a Model Y and compared the volumes. He hasn't hit the accelerator pedal to see which one accelerates better. He compared it. He compared the heads-up display to the Xpeng G6. He fluffed the headroom issue, which if it's got a lower roof line and it's got a taller battery pack underneath. He didn't talk about the extra weight, 400 kilograms. This is a fluff video. Why aren't you critical? Why aren't you saying, wait a minute, here's some potential issues with this car? How are they manufacturing this car for a lower cost than Tesla? If they can sell it for a lower price than Tesla, how are they manufacturing something that weighs 400 kilograms more, 20% more mass, with Napa leather seats and this fancy head-up display and massaging? He didn't even mention the massaging seats. I think it's got massaging seats. Got all these features that all cost money. How are they able to manufacture this at lower cost than Tesla Model Y? They can't. They're using Chinese accounting, and maybe they got government subsidies or whatever it is, but they're not going to kill the Model Y because all the previous Model Y killers haven't killed the Model Y. And by the way, how's your FSD? Chinese YouTubers are going crazy about Tesla FSD. They're not going crazy about Xiaomi's self-driving. I think they're crashing. I don't hold me to this, but I think the Xiaomi self-driving is crashing. And I experienced the Xpeng self-driving, and we almost hit 2 cars in Thailand. And like the easy stuff that Tesla FSD beta did better in 2022. You're not a Model Y killer. You're not a Tesla killer. And this guy is a fluffer. Where was the critical analysis? Where's the Model Y? How do you do a video saying this is a Model Y killer and not have a Model Y in the video? Hopefully we'll have more episodes of Tesla killer that's not a Tesla killer. Thanks, everybody.